Welcome to the journey of an aesthete, a comprehensive examination of all things aesthetic, the arts, the humanities, and what it means to be human.
Is this Sunny?
Hello.
Is this Sunny, Redmond?
This is Sunny.
Sunny.
Is this Mitch Hampton?
This is Mitch Hampton, and welcome to our podcast, Journey of an Aesthete.
I was wondering how you'd say that.
How do you pronounce it? I'm just curious.
No. You're obviously doing the right thing. It's the first time I've ever heard it.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, it's a noun. I mean, it comes from aesthetic, of course, right? Aesthetics, and certainly.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons why you're on our show, of course. But I don't really know if I pronounce it correctly. No one's corrected me thus far, so I'm just going to stick with what I can do.
Awesome.
It's really an honor to have you on our show, and it all starts in your case from a single photograph. Because I was a fan of the late great Deborah Turbeville, and I know you did work with her in general, I think. But I was fortunate to acquire a photograph of the Vogue bathhouse photograph that she did that you were a part of.
Well, it was interesting. It was my first shooting for Vogue. And it was in the men's public bathhouse on 23rd Street in New York City.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place. It's all white marble with gray streaks in it and brass everything. And it was February. It was cold. We were in bathing suits.
Yep.
And there were a lot of us, so it took time for hair and makeup. Mm-hmm. And in that time, she was probably nervous, as we all were, because I think most of us that were there had never been in Vogue, and in that business, that's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And by early afternoon, no photographs had been taken, and I was getting a little nervous that it wasn't going to happen. And in that setting, in the bathing suits, it just felt like being a gladiator, waiting to go out into the Colosseum and ride the chariots or fight the lions or whatever. I'll backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to hold that thought, because I did want to talk a little bit about, your origins doing that kind of work before we get to your healing. I mean, I want to cover as much as we, with your permission, as much as we can. But go ahead. What were you gonna say?
So my very first job was with Carl Fisher for Redbook, and it was to illustrate a Carlos McCullough story. And they asked me if I could do a finger wave, and of course I said yes, and I had no idea. And then I got the booking, and I was like, oh, my goodness, now I have to do it. Yeah. And so I messed around with my hair with bobby pins, because my mom was of that era. Mm-hmm. And go out to Connecticut to a house. And there was a very well-known male model of the time that was about to go over to Italy to do fashion shooting. And Carl Fisher was like, okay. Now, Carlos McCullough was basically much to herself. She was very shy and quiet, and she didn't like her picture taken. Mm-hmm. So I'd like you to look shy and quiet and like you didn't want your picture taken. And it was like, that was easy because I was like scared and nervous. And he was like, oh, great, wonderful, you know? And so that kind of really set the mood for me for the rest of my career, was to be the woman, the girl, the person that was in the setting and the clothes that I was in. So I did a lot of method acting.
Interesting.
That
fascinates me because I know that I understand you were associated with Ford Modeling, which is certainly an extraordinary institution. I thought maybe you wanted to discuss that world or coming out of that or anything that comes to your mind, because that's certainly you can't get much more impressive than that, I don't think, at that time.
Well, there were a lot of good modeling agencies around by that time, not only in New York, but in Europe and everything. Actually, I started with Stewart models. Uh-huh. When I went to Eileen, I went on Easter break because I was wanting to earn money for college. And I went with a friend from high school, and we went to Stewart Models, and we were interviewed, and then went to Eileen Ford, tried to find Wilhelmina, but never could find her in the time we had. And Eileen sent me to a photographer. Then his name might come to me. I never really worked with him that much. And when I went back to her, she said, I think you should go home and forget about it. So when I came to Ford's, it was 8 years into my 15-year career. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really her kind of gal. But I had a career, and I was a moneymaker, so she took me in. She's a businesswoman. And she was interesting because her birthday is March 28th, mm-hmm. and mine's a little bit later in April, and I was a little bit younger. Mm-hmm. And so, but I always remembered her birthday, and I would go to Zabar's and get a basket and fill it with all kinds of wonderful finger food and jams and, just whatever seemed good. Yeah. Yeah. And bring it to her on her birthday. Wow. And she would be like, how do you always remember? And I said, well, I'm an Aries too. Oh. And she said, oh, no, you're not. You're too nice. Anyway, I mean, she was interesting to deal with because you just never knew if she was going to be loving and kind or a businesswoman. Mm-hmm.
Well, I imagine she had to be both. I mean, someone in her position and her skill had to have more than one, one skill or one. Probably all kinds of things going on in that world, I'd imagine.
I mean, she really kept things organized and straight in a business that wasn't necessarily abiding by guidelines, especially with photographers. And I'd go out on this to my appointments or a booking, and I'd be full on makeup, dressed fabulously. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people guys would try and pick me up on the street, and it was like, no way. And you'd go into a person's office, a stranger, but you had their name and their address, and they were looking for somebody to do the job, and you'd go in and go, hi, how are you? Yeah. So it's an interesting, an interesting opportunity and challenge at the same time.
Yeah, I'd like to hear both about the challenges and opportunities. I want to come back to Turbeville because I do consider her an artist.
Oh, she was amazing. I mean,
and what I mean is that what set her apart from the other photographers of that period, if you had to talk about qualities that her vision, or whatever you want to say comes to mind about that.
Well, she wanted to capture glamour that wasn't glamorous.
Mm.
Okay, she didn't want to do the traditional, fashion setup with she liked environments, and it always seemed like I was cold when I was working with her. But it's, she just didn't want an ordinary fashion shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the posed and everything. She wanted natural and elegance, but a bit of mystery at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
No, I worked with her for many years, both in New York and Europe.
Wow.
And we were friends. I mean, we'd go do things and have dinner and, and we talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. I mean, what were some of the other photographers that you work with? There are probably many, but in that period of time is so fascinating culturally, the 70s. And
it was a time apart.
Yeah, just think about you and Chris Royer in this photograph, and of course I guess she's my ideal was to have one episode with all of you on the same episode, but that's maybe sometime in the future. But then when I discovered that you were doing this work in healing, I thought, we gotta. It was like I made a beeline for almost to that. So there's a lot to talk about, but say more about those years and the 70s and your modeling the culture then, or how it's changed, or whatever.
How I got there was my parents sold our house in Garrison, New York, and moved out to the Midwest. Huh. And I was in my second year of college. My father was a Bible scholar, and my mother was a converted Roman Catholic.
Interesting.
And they went and started living and working at Stonecroft Mission, and I was 20, having had 2 years at college. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea for me. And I had gone on Easter break and gotten acceptance from Stewart Models.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend that was staying at her boyfriend's apartment in the Bronx, and she said I could stay with her. So I had a place to stay, to land. And so I tried to talk my parents into it, and they were like, oh, no, you're coming home with us. And it's like, So I called my college boyfriend in tears and said, my parents said no. And he laughed at me. I almost hung up on him. And he said, well, just because your parents said no doesn't mean you have to obey them. And I don't know why I didn't think of it. I mean, I didn't always do the golden rule with them, but he gave me the keys to my kingdom, and that was it. I was on my way to New York. I had no idea what I was doing. I never dreamed of doing it. I only did it so that I could go back to college and stay on the East Coast and see my boyfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never a cheerleader or a prom queen and my first date in high school, I asked the guy out.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Well, so I just didn't have, and looking back at my pictures, I was absolutely gorgeous, but I had no idea. When you're
a kind of an odd question, because I am an outsider to your world. I don't know anything about it really, except for literature I've read, both journalistic and some other things. But what were the differences between the girls you met who did have that more typical background, who had been cheerleaders, prom queens? Did you find you actually had commonalities with them after all, or what were those differences, or what? Because I don't really know. I mean, that's interesting. You coming from a different background and.
Not really. It seemed like the girls or young women, I mean, there were beauty queens that came in that just didn't make it,
right?
In the fashion world. It was, I mean, it's a tough business. And it either clicked or ate you alive, or you worked.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing the choosing, I was hoping to be chosen.
Yeah.
So I don't, somebody that was doing the choosing could tell you better. The people that I worked with a lot, Arthur Elgort, George Barkington, Rebecca Blake, let's see, Oscar Peterson. He goes, "Oh, I like you, because I wear glasses." He says, "You look kind of frumpy." And no, he was the character, and just wonderful to work with.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you evidently were getting work and being chosen, as you said, but I'm just...
Well, yeah, it was interesting because I ended up in the Bronx with like $125 in my pocket and being 20 years old.
Yeah.
And in those days, there were no cell phones. It was like a payphone was 10 cents and a ride on the subway was 25 cents.
Yep.
So I would show up at the agency first thing in the morning. And at first, they gave me go-sees. So they sent me, and because I really didn't have any money, I walked around New York that whole summer.
Wow.
And when I had about $5 left in my pocket, I asked one of the bookers, I said, "Well, when do you think I'm going to get some work?" And she said, "Well, it could take a while." And I said, "Well, I got $5, and I guess when that runs out, I'm going to have to call my parents, and they don't really want me to be here, so they're probably going to drag me home."
Wow.
And I went on, photographers would have you do a photo shoot as like a trial to see how you worked with them, what you looked like, how the pictures came out. And what that would do would be they'd share prints with you, and they would have prints for their portfolio, and so would you. I mean, I was walking around with pictures from the RIT photo students, know.
Yeah.
And I originally came in with long hair, and Donna DeSetta said, "No, you got to cut it." And so she sent me to a hairdresser that she knew, and he cut off all my long red hair. Oh. Not all of it, but, left it all kind of curly, short, girly. And so anyway, I went to Connecticut with a photographer, Jim Bogan, and we shot all day and came back. And when the next day I had a booking. Wow. So, I mean, it's just like, I think the bookers were like, "Hey, we think she's really good. She doesn't have any money, And the first one was, the Carl Fisher one, but Otto Stubikoff for Glamour. And Barbara Bordnick for 17. And when the pictures came back to 17, they started booking me immediately. I mean, I had freckles and curly red hair, and
those were quite famous photographs from that era, were they not? I mean, the 17 Sunny Redmond, I think, are iconic, aren't they? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. And it was a unique period of time because before that, I mean, it was just also a unique beginning of the junior or ingenue model.
Yeah.
I mean, because before, when the 40s and 50s and even 60s, it was debutantes and people in society and like that. And so the junior market was a whole new thing. I mean, and all the young people I was working with, we had no idea. We just go out and laugh and have fun and wear these crazy 70s clothes, and we had no idea, but
when you say crazy 70s clothes, what were typical clothes of that?
Well, it was bell bottoms, bright clothes, patterns.
Yep.
I mean, it was, the beginning of psychedelics and smoking pot and Woodstock and Vietnam War.
Yep.
I mean, it was, peace marches and Martin Luther King and like that.
Were you politically active in those years? Did you involve yourself in any activism in that time?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. War's never a good thing. I mean, if you need to protect yourself, that's one thing. It's another thing. If you're doing something for other reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a very profound distinction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a difference. Yeah. So, I mean, it was an amazing time and had a lot of fun and got to travel.
Traveling. So when you think about travel, what are the places that you went that stay with you that really made a difference in your life or were particularly memorable or change something inside of you that come to mind?
Well, the thing is that the fashion settings were 3 months in advance, so that the film would, because we were in film and slides, so the film would have to get developed, they'd have to be looked at, then they'd have to be chosen by the editorial staff and the photographer, then there was the layout. So we were shooting summer in February, in January. I mean, sometimes you were out in Central Park and, in freezing cold weather, shooting, summer stuff. Or they travel. I mean, the Caribbean and Florida were big, and I did a lot of the pattern catalogs, Simplicity and Buttrick and Vogue Patterns. And, I mean, you'd go for a week, and the week before they had patterns chosen and garments made, and you'd have a fitting, and the seamstresses would adjust anything, and then they'd pack up the clothes and send them wherever. And you'd arrive, you'd have an editor, a stylist, a photographer, an assistant, and whoever else was along on the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the memorable ones was I got to go to Venice with Mademoiselle.
Oh, wow.
In February.
The only time I was ever in Venice was in late December. So
I'm sure it's great, and whenever you go, I think it is. But I went with the editor, Harriet Kane, and she was, her nickname was Harriet the Hat, because she loved hats, and I looked good in hats. Yep. So, she was always putting on and off hats during the while we were taking photographs. But when we finished, we spent the night in Rome. We took the jet boat back, and and then the next day we went around and saw just the amazing statues and everything there. That was fun. Mademoiselle also took me to Tahiti, which is really quite wonderful, with George Barkington. And that was a nice trip.
Wow.
Probably the most profound one, which is kind of leads into how I got into healing, was we had a friend that got in on a private trip in the Grand Canyon, a whitewater raft trip.
Wow.
And I went right from a Vogue shooting, my straightened hair, my fake nails, to Flagstaff, to Lee's Ferry. And I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen. So I took my socks and shoes off to get into the boat. And it was an amazing experience. The lead guy grew up in Williams, Arizona, which is right below the Grand Canyon. And he was a Vietnam vet and one of a battalion of men, that's 500, and 12 came home.
Mm.
He walked point longer than he should have because they didn't have any replacements.
Mm.
He would notice his shoe was untied, and he'd stop to tie it, and there'd be a tripwire in front of him. He'd stop to smoke a cigarette, and the other guys walking point with him would get shot.
Mm.
So when he came home, his father was the pharmacist in Williams, Arizona, and his mother was the first grade teacher.
Wow.
And his father figured out that he was addicted to alcohol and heroin because he was self-medicating from what he'd been through.
Sure. Yeah.
So his father took him and put him with the Hopi medicine men who took him to the Kivas, and they healed him. Because the indigenous people have ceremonies and ways to integrate the warriors who have risked their all for their tribe. They have ways to integrate them back into normal life and on the process that they've been in. So his name is Wesley Smith. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about Sweat Lodge and Vision Quest and natural healing and medicine wheel and all kinds of stuff that I had never heard of before. And
this is entirely new to you, is it right? It's an interesting.
Totally. I mean, I knew about aspirin and cough syrup and Vicks Vapor Rub. But what really caught my attention was the Vision Quest. Now, Vision Quest is a ceremony that's done around puberty, and you're prepared for it. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, he talked about it, but I still had no idea. But somehow the process of, it's called crying for a vision, where you basically ask God or consciousness or the universe, what am I here for? Mm. And even though I was beyond that age, I wanted to know. So, and I didn't tell anybody. I just was like, okay, what am I here for? What am I here for? And I'd ask the river and the rock.
May I interject? Sorry to interject, but isn't it fair to say that there's no wrong age to ask those questions? Can that be asked in an age?
Obviously not, because on the third day, I heard a voice.
Yeah.
Now, I'd never heard of, you have your own thoughts in your head that you kind of hear, but this was not anything I'd ever heard of before. And I mean, it sounded like a loudspeaker in my head, but I knew somehow nobody else could hear it. Wow. And so what am I here for? And the voice said very clearly, you're a healer. Oh. You should be healing. And I mean, I was ready to, hike out of the canyon and check into medical school. I mean, it was that powerful. And I thought, 3 days in, you don't really know where you're going. You don't know if you have enough water. There's rattlesnakes. Probably not a good idea. But, I mean, that basically lit my pilot light. And came home to New York. There was work afterwards, modeling. But I stopped watching television, and I started looking for books and answers that would tell me about the amazing experience that I had. Mm-hmm. And so here I am many years later.
Well, I want to know how you got from just looking at the books to actually practicing this, and so you I'm interested in some details of that. How that.
My former spouse had a show of his artwork in Florida at a gallery, and he hired a writer from Boston, Massachusetts, to write about the show and put it in art magazines and things like that, take pictures. And I think the guy's name was Tony Towell. Yes, it was. And his sister had been going to medicine wheel gatherings, Carrie. And we had lots of talks, and she told me about Sun Bear and the medicine wheel gatherings. And there was one in Rhinebeck, New York, that next summer. And I went, and that changed my life forever. I mean, there were teachers there. They set up a medicine wheel. I had a profound experience in that. I did sweat lodge, and they offered, if you wanted to do an apprenticeship. Now, as I'm a white person, I cannot legally or officially be a medicine person.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the bloodline.
Yeah.
But he was teaching white people the sacred ways of the indigenous ones of this country, and it was absolutely profound.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And it changed it, because I also started doing more, they call it alternative, but I don't consider it alternative. It's really traditional medicine.
Yeah.
Applied kinesiology, reflexology, homeopathy, Bach flower remedies, Paralandra essences. And I thought about maybe going to school and becoming a chiropractor, but between work and everything, and then in 1985, I became pregnant with my first child. And I just kind of didn't have the time or go back to school. Mm-hmm. But I haven't needed that, because the training and certificates and the different trainings that I've had, I haven't needed to go to a medical school, because I'm really kind of more of a traditional medicine person than the current medical technology, et cetera, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
I mean, it works really well. It can work really well if the current medical technology people are open to suggestion. I've done some really good work with some very severe cases that have improved better than the doctors ever thought, because of the different things that I do. And not all medical people are open to it. And I'm not an arm twister, but if I can help, it helps. It's amazing. It's different. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's where the original pharmaceuticals come from.
Right. So you're in Taos now. Is that still where you practice?
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that practice? For over a decade, right? Or
it's probably at least 30 years or more.
Years, yeah.
I mean, because I had a full-on practice in Aspen, where I lived for 15 years. And I moved here, just a lot of healers here. And I wanted some time for myself. And so when I first moved here, it was 2007. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, the economy tanked. Yeah. I didn't see it coming. And so people find me, backtrack a little bit. So I didn't have an income for like 3 years when the economy tanked. And so I started doing service work, gardening, driving people to medical appointments, grocery shopping for people, recovering from surgery. And these people, who couldn't garden anymore had health issues. And so they'd talk to me, and we'd talk, and I'd say, well, I've heard that this is good for that, and you know, I'd make recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
They would never come to see me as a holistic practitioner, but because I was a gardener, you know, I was just like a nice person that recommended something, and they tried it, and it worked, and you know, so it was kind of like I gardened and did sessions there too.
Everybody needs an anchor in life. You, me, just everybody. Anchor made this whole show possible. I'm immensely grateful to them. You too can use Anchor to make your own shows and create your own vision. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. What do you think about those years to now? Because 2008 and the economic crisis, I mean, in terms of that part of your journey, change in your practice or just life in general?
It definitely gave me experiences that I needed to be more balanced and actual in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I really had to cinch in the waist belt, you know, and figure out how to make a living and survive. Before the pandemic, Cow's Herb is a herbal supplement company here. It's a health food store, but it doesn't have food. They had me come in once a month, and I brought in my treatment table because I do cranial sacral.
Oh, okay.
It's fabulous work. I mean, in Colorado, I used to do massage, but I found, and I was training in this technology, but I found that it was even better than massage as far as I'm considered, because it worked differently. Mm-hmm. But and I can work very deeply on somebody, but only when the body lets me. I'm not somebody that goes in and if there's scar tissue or anything, you know, stirs it up. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in adding trauma to trauma.
Do you mind talking a little further about that, so for people who might not quite understand or comprehend, like myself, about that? Because it's almost, are you saying that every human being is very unique and you have to just talk more? It interests me. Talk a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, the body's like, when it's healthy, it's like a well-tuned orchestra.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So you've got the nervous system, which is like the string section. You've got the heart, which is like the percussion. You've got the mitochondria and the lymph and all the different systems of the body. And so when it's all, if you will, humming along, it's perfectly in tune.
Oh, wow.
When something other than harmony is introduced to it, it has a different frequency and a different sound. Mm-hmm. So in cranial sacral, your hands are listening. So your kinesthetic system is listening to the kinesthetic system that you're working with. So I do a diagnostic at the ankles.
Oh, wow.
And the body receives energy through the left and puts it out through the right. So it's a circuit of energy that I complete when I put my thumb and forefinger on the ankles of the person I'm working with. And basically, in following the energy and listening to the energy with my hands and my kinesthetic system, my kinesthetic wisdom informs me where there are glitches in the person's system.
Oh, wow.
And then the body shows me where to start. Like I had somebody come in Colorado, and she was having problems with her shoulder, her right shoulder. And so I did the diagnostic, and the body showed me a different place to start, and just took me a whole circuit around the body. And after a couple of touches, it's holding, it's touching, and it's the body wants to be healthy. So when it's in pain or when it's not working correctly, it's got a different vibration or feel to it.
Yes.
So it's holding, and then the body, the energy, it'll get hot, it'll get cold, it'll release energy.
Yeah.
And so after a few of those holds, she was like, it's my right shoulder. I said, I know. And I explained to her how it worked and what I was doing and what I was experiencing. And so when too little work and too much work is not a good thing. So to be able to do the right amount of work, so you don't put the person in a weird space,
right?
Especially if they have to drive.
Yeah.
And if it's not enough energy, it's not going to be the healing or the release or the relaxation that the person's looking for. And if it's too much, they're going to be out of commission for a little bit. And so it's finding that balance point where the body goes, okay, that's enough. And it's like, so I got, her body said, okay, that's enough. And I said, okay. She said, but you didn't touch my right shoulder. I said, I know. And she sat up and she went, wait a minute, it doesn't hurt. And I said, I know, because your shoulder was the part of your body that got your attention, but it was other things that needed help.
Interesting.
And the shoulder was the part that got your attention. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So it's unusual work, and I love it because my specialty is trauma. So I help people with trauma that the other rehab and everything hasn't helped.
Well, certainly trauma is is in a lot of people's minds, certainly in the culture at large, and it's a concern because there is a lot of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's not just physical. Sometimes it's physical and psychological and emotional.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell when somebody's been verbally traumatized by the way they hold their body. There's a cock to the head. It's like they're always in this kind of protective stance, like, something's going to come at them. So I started doing studies at the New School when I was in New York City. And then there was reflexology. I mean, there were places to learn all this different stuff. And then my studies with the indigenous ones, I added their ways of perceiving, understanding, and being with people to that training. Yeah.
What are your reflections on the connection between your modeling career, those years, and the wisdom that you've gained working with people in the present? What are your thoughts or reflections about the connection, seeing your life as one life, as a single life, singular and single life, a journey? It's probably a lot to talk about, but what comes to your mind when you think about these connections, or anything you want to say about that?
Well, they were different worlds that I was stepping into. And they really didn't have any connection except for me.
Right.
I was fortunate enough after that one Colorado River trip to the Grand Canyon to actually go to training in Idaho to become a river guide.
Oh, interesting.
And I was able to row in the Grand Canyon for 5 summers. No, it's amazing. It was like ballroom dancing with the universe. And I mean, I was skinny. I mean, I was like a size 4 or 6, and I'm like 5'9". And I just kept going for it. And I mean, the company that I rode for, Arizona Raft Adventures, they had 45-foot rafts, but they also had what they called snout boats that were made from the bridge pontoons from the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And they were long. I mean, they probably were like 65 feet long. And the oars, you had to have counterweights because the oars were so long and heavy that you couldn't possibly use them properly without some weight helping you to be able to maneuver them well. And it was really amazing. I mean, it was really, so in the summers, those 5 summers, I would go to the Grand Canyon and row and camp out and be gone all summer, and then I'd come back to New York City and model in the fall and winter.
Well, those are two different worlds, being in the country and the water, and New York City, you can't get much different. And yet you were doing both. You were in both, which to me is fascinating.
Because it seems very natural to me.
I know it may seem natural to you, but it's I don't know if everybody possesses all those intelligences, because I see them as different, in my clunky way of putting it, multiple intelligences, because it means you have to navigate, extremes of human life, and urban, the city, the water. And then on top of it, you're developing the ability to actually help people, help other people. And to me, it's astonishing. So I guess I'm wondering what comes to your mind or your consciousness when you think about, you don't have to mention people's names, but clients that you made real breakthroughs with that come to your mind, or you learned something from them, or in your work, if whatever pops into your mind there about that.
Well, there was, while I was here in Taos, there was a woman that came from the Dominican Republic, and she came with friends and family members, I think, and they had connections with a person here, and they were doing something that she didn't want to do. And she asked the connecting person if there was a spiritual woman that she would recommend that she could have a session with. And we had a profound session. I mean, when people come to me, I try and get out of the way. Like with ego or self-importance or anything like that, and be open to listening, really listening to the person. And because of the training that I've had with the indigenous ones, and I don't know exactly, but sometimes things, if you, information, wisdom comes through me, and it'll just be an awareness, and I'll speak the truth of it. And people that I do that with, people are like, wow, could you repeat that? And it was like, I don't know, because it came through me, because my prayer is that I get out of the way and that the person seeking whatever they're seeking gets what they need. See, that's why I call it like traditional medicine. And that's where my indigenous experiences have taken my training to just a slightly different place. so that, and I integrate all of them. And it's like it was stepping into different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm the only thing that was, you know, that connected them.
Right.
And it was in my life. I've done a lot of really good work, helped a lot of people. I worked with a woman that lost her sight at 39.
Oh.
And it was aniridia, which is a very rare disease. And they knew it somehow at birth that by a certain point, her vision was going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so at 9 years old, her family sent her to a blind school to learn how to read Braille.
Yes.
And, you know, have skills when her vision went away, which was, she didn't want her vision to go away. She didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to be in blind school. She wanted to be home with her family. But I met her after she had lost her vision, and she had a belief that if she couldn't see, life wasn't worth living.
Mm.
And
I'm glad Ray Charles didn't have that belief.
well, yeah, I worked with her very seriously.
That, as you know, that made great contributions that were blind artistically. So in the arts, but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay, you can. So it was pretty intense work with her because she was very strong in her opinions, and I was the knot in the end of her rope. And I said, well, you know, in China, people that are blind are masseuses because when one of the senses goes away, the other senses are intensified.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this woman took me on a Grand Canyon river trip as her personal guide. And we did it different than the way that she wanted to do it because it was a whole different way of going about leading her around and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There was, I forget what she wanted to do, but basically she would hang on to the carabiner on the back of my backpack.
Okay.
And I would guide her through stuff. And I'd say, you know, and if we had something to step over, I would stop and offer my hand and step over it. And we did climbing, bouldering and climbing on rocks that seeing people wouldn't even dare to do. But we'd be tapping, I'd have another guide help me, we'd be tapping on the rocks. So she'd either put her hands or feet someplace and we'd keep her safe.
Mm.
I came back, I was a rag because I was doing, and she was mad at me sometimes. I said, because we have to get back to the boat. Well, I want to go to this place. And it's like, no, you can't keep the group waiting.
Right.
So she went on another Grand Canyon trip, and the guides passed her off from one to another. When one was tired, there'd be a new guide come on. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the trip, she was a rag because they did everything she wanted to do. And she came back and she thanked me for limiting her, that it was a much better trip with me.
Hmm. Well, that's quite a thanks then. That's
yeah, no, I mean,
extraordinary.
People, it's so interesting when people find me. Like I have people from Oklahoma that don't know each other, but when they come here, they have a session with me. Mm-hmm. It's just like this woman from the Dominican Republic. Yeah. She had three questions that she had only talked to with 3 other counselors.
Yeah.
And every single one, we found the answer. And one of it just came through me. And my prayer was answered to help this person.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unusual work.
It's unusual, but you seem so comfortable with it, and so I dare say so skilled in that. And you speak with a lot of authority on it, so that's very appealing to me, and it's I'm just wondering. We're in, as you know, very difficult times now, and given your extensive experience with this part of your journey, is there anything you want to say to our audience about art or about anything we've discussed that's important to you that comes into your consciousness now?
Well, I mean, I think for quite a while, many of us have known that changes needed to be made, but the changes just seemed like too big, too impossible. And so this thing comes along, and on some level, we don't have a choice. We've got to adjust appropriately. I call it the current normal because people wanted to go back to normal.
Yeah.
There is no normal. It's just what people were used to. And I think for the tsunami that happened on New Year's, the elephants were chained. And before it came, they ripped up the posts and they went to the highlands. And after it subsided, they came down and rescued the people.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's like the indigenous experiences that I've had is to be present. That's where the gift is. If you're ahead of you have to make plans and commitments, and like we made a plan and commitment to have this talk.
Yeah, but it's wonderful. I'm glad we did. I really am glad we did. It's really something. But that's go ahead. Yeah.
So, but the present is so important to be really present. I mean, that's where the gift is. That's why they call it the present. And each moment that you're present in will unfold onto the next moment appropriately. I mean, you've got the World Tower thing where people were supposed to be there, but they weren't there. People weren't supposed to be there, but they were there. That kind of listening and being present and maybe, you just never know what the future is, really, honestly.
That's true.
And so to just do the best you can in each moment and be good to each other as best as you can.
Well, that's really beautifully said. Well, I've tried to be as present as I can in all my episodes. I always feel like I can do better, but I always try my best at that, certainly.
Well, the thing is that you learn more about balance by losing it than keeping it.
Yeah.
If you always keep your balance, you never learn anything. It's where, you put yourself out there and you learn. And it's okay. That's, it's being human, and being okay with that.
Being a Libra, certainly the issue of balance is never too far from my consciousness, I could say.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good awareness.
Yeah. This has been a beautiful discussion. Is there anything else before we even good things end that you want to say, or anything comes to mind about anything?
It feels good.
Okay.
And we can talk again if you'd like. I mean, because obviously, did you look at my resume at all?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course I did.
So there's a lot. I'm a seeker.
Yes.
And so I'm continually curious and seeking and learning. It's there's always something that will catch my attention and bring me forward. So, and I'm glad to share. And hopefully this has been...
One more thing. You talked about your parents being very religious growing up and that kind of conservative religiosity. I thought, well, this is very interesting. You've been practicing a kind of spirituality. Any thoughts about that connection or difference? Or it's interesting, huh? About what?
Yeah. At 18, I was at a church, and it was discovered that the minister was having affairs with the divorcing women that were coming to him for counseling. Mm-hmm. He's married and 60, and it turned out that the deacons were having affairs and stuff like that, and it was like, okay, I'm out of here.
Right.
You can't be talking at me from that post up there, right, and pointing your finger at me. Right. And, it's like, I know the rules, and I hope it's okay that I don't sing in the choir. But, spiritual, your spiritual beliefs are personal. Sure. And religion is a great place to start. But really, it's between you and God or Jehovah, mm-hmm, or Creator or the divine mystery, or however you relate to it.
That's right.
So, I mean, it was a great place to start, and my father was really concerned for me, mm-hmm, but it's like I don't need to have somebody tell me. I'm in connection with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What a remarkable journey, Sonny. Well, I really enjoyed this a lot. And maybe we'll meet again. And again, my dream is to get you and Chris Royer on the same show. I don't know if that's possible or not, but who knows? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen Chris in years. Sure. I did watch her on the Halston specials, and she's had some interviews and film videos up on Facebook. And it's so interesting because we've definitely headed in different directions. And not that she's not a spiritual person, but she also has kept herself in the fashion world.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting, the choices people make and the different paths. Of course, she's so identified with one particular designer. I guess... But before you go on, let me ask you about designers that you thought were this person really makes great clothing.
Well, I mean, Halston was amazing. Uh-huh. He was a dream of mine. Uh-huh. And I did work for him a little bit. I got to do, how I met him was Jeffrey Bean and Gloria Vanderbilt and Steve Mackey and Halston got chosen to be on the Love Boat on a special 2 hour.
Love Boat. Correct.
Yes, I was actually, the director chose me to be the model for the actors because one of the actors was working for a bridal designer supposedly, and he was in love with the owner of the business's daughter, but the owner didn't think that he was a good designer.
Right.
So, and they were on the boat to be part of the fashion show.
That's right.
And there was, so I came out with 2 male models in a bridal outfit, the full thing with a full skirt and the veil and the headdress and the bodice, everything, right? Yeah. And so I had it actually transformed into a disco outfit.
I know that because I rewatched this recently in preparation for this. But the one
that was me.
Hold on, I have not yet to see the Merv Griffin. I don't know if that's available anywhere. I don't know if you have a copy of you on Griffin show, but anyhow.
I have a videotape of it.
You do?
I was working in my studio today, and I have It's a VHS.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've never seen it. I'd love to see it. But being on a Love Boat, that's its kind of its own crazy universe. That episode with Halston and those things.
Oh yeah, and it was. I'm trying to remember the man from Solo, the actor. He sat.
Short did a Love Boat too, of all people.
Right, but this other guy, he sat with his script in front of the models' campers because we were on a set. We weren't on the boat. It was it was filmed on a Hollywood set, and they'd always show you pictures of the boat, but it was in a studio. But I got to meet Halston. And so I guess when he watched me do the bridal thing, which is off with the headdress and off with the bodice, and the skirt turned inside out, and I had a gold lame bustier and knickers.
Yeah, the disco.
And the dress turned into a cape. Yeah. And it, yeah. So, and I got to wear some of his things. And then actually I was part of his perfume launch.
You were?
Yeah. I can send you a picture of that. I didn't work for him a lot, which was sad because
the fact that you worked with him at all is remarkable. I mean, it's just I don't know. Do people today realize how special that time was? Maybe some people do, but I don't know. I just it's really something. What were your impressions of Ewan McGregor's film, the biopic? Did you watch that?
Oh, I thought he was absolutely fabulous. There was sometimes when he was speaking.
Yeah, first of all, that was a great piece of filmmaking as a film, I thought. Didn't you? I mean, yeah.
I thought it was good. Yeah. He was amazing. In fact, sometimes when he was speaking, I could have sworn it was Halston.
Yep.
No, it was totally amazing. He did such a fabulous job. Another fabulous designer, John Anthony, and Oscar de la Renta, and Mary McFadden.
Oh wow! Huh.
Yeah, I was her house model for a while.
McFadden.
Yep. And John Kaleo was her fashion assistant, and we had so much fun doing the show because he had music and different things for the different style, similar styles because it would be the same kind of fabric, and then there would be different outfits in kind of one kind of collection. And there was one time when he had me on the runway, and he had me stop and look suddenly like I was startled or afraid.
Yeah.
And the whole audience went like that. And then we went on with the show. I forget why, but John Kaleo was an amazing designer also, and had a very short-lived career. He had his own, he had backers in his own line, but not enough influence in the fashion world to.
It's true. To be, and certainly not a big a name as some other people. I'd love to see a copy of that Merv Griffin show if you could send it to me. So I'd love to see that.
Well, or I can see because you can have it converted.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have?
I don't.
Do you have?
I'm so low tech. I mean, I've just got a computer and.
That's okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is I think in order for you to see it, you'll need to have it converted.
Yeah.
And I might even have a device to do that, but that's future reference. But the other amazing designer is Givenchy.
Oh.
Hubert.
At him.
Okay.
Work with him.
It was such an honor to work with him.
Oh my goodness.
He mostly used black girls because, he did linen suits with white gloves and pillbox hats and things like that.
That was his style, his métier. He was known for that, yeah.
He was amazing. So there was one time I was in Paris for a pret-a-porter, and linen suit and he called the tailor in because the shoulder wasn't doing exactly what he wanted.
That's right.
And he had a discussion in French. Now, my French is okay, but it was like, and he started talking about flax, the nature of the plant, and the nature of the plant and made into linen.
That's right.
And he talked about the different way to place the pattern of the sleeve, so with the fabric where it would be puffier.
Right.
And I mean, they were in 3-piece suits, and the tailor had a tape measure around his neck.
Yeah.
And Hubert was talking about flax and fabric, and and the tailor was, oui, monsieur, oui, monsieur, oui, monsieur, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he totally forgot I was there.
Oh, wow.
And when he finished, he stepped back and he saw me and he went, oh, mademoiselle, excusez-moi. He apologized. And it was like, I got to see the real Givenchy. It was amazing.
What did you glean from eavesdropping, even though he didn't know you were eavesdropping? What I mean, that's, I guess you saw.
What I just said, I mean,
right.
He came from old world understanding of fashion.
Yeah. I mean, linen is such a, I've worn linen suits. I know about linen. And there's different kinds of linen, too, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, remarkable.
Uh-huh.
Remarkable. Yes, we can't go on forever, Sonny, but I really enjoyed being present with you.
Great.
Immensely.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for your generosity of spirit and everything, being on it.
And thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you immensely, and to be continued.
Great. I look forward to it. Have a good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't like goodbyes, so I'll see you soon, folks. Thank you.